Are there advantages to aging? Yes, I am Debbi-Jo Horton, and welcome to Advantages to Aging. Join my guests and I as we discuss aging and what makes for a healthy lifestyle, which results in a quality life. Thank you for joining me today. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Advantages to Aging. Today we have with us Kristen Williams from Riversedge Arts. And you might be thinking, the arts, what does that have to do with aging? Well, you are about to find out. It's really all about philanthropy. If you find that what Kristen and her team are doing really touches your heart, there will be a donation link in the show notes. Welcome, Kristen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So it's really not about arts. It's really about what we can do as we get older. And one of those things is a lot of times we find when we no longer have a purpose behind us getting up and going to work every day, we can struggle sometimes. So one thing that a lot of people like to do when they get older is increase their charitable giving. So Kristen, can you just share with us what charitable giving can do for a person?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the main things that I discovered once I sort of hit the big 4-0 mark and all of that is, I had done a lot of volunteer work in my 20s and 30s. Every Martin Luther King Jr. Day, I was out doing, a public project, painting a school, that sort of thing. And I can tell you that at that point, I had no disposable income. I was a grad student, and then I was, a sort of low paid assistant professor and all of that kind of thing with no job security. But I really wanted to give back to the community, and I really wanted to be engaged. Volunteering is one of the best ways to do that, and so is giving of other resources that you might have. But one thing that's really important to me, coming from a nonprofit, organization that I work for, is there is a lot of emphasis on the desire to accrue money from people, to give funds and money. Hey, we love that. That's great. And it does actually make you feel really good. I'll say now I have been able to do a lot more donating of funds to places because of my different economic status now. And it does give you a really good feeling. The sort of effect that it has been proven by neuropathologists and other scientists to increase your endorphin level, to make you smile. And I think we all have felt that at Christmas and other gift-giving holidays. One of the things that we love to do for each other when we want to express our feelings is to give. But I also think it's really important to recognize that the way we give to each other in non-monetary ways. And that's been one of the biggest things that I discovered, again, in my 20s and 30s, was to do volunteer work with places. And it just made me feel terrific. It also meant that as a single woman at that time, and as a person who was living in a large city and often felt kind of alone or isolated, it was one of the best ways to get involved in the community and to make friends, because you end up with people around you who are interested in the same things. And one of the biggest issues, particularly plaguing single women as they age, is a lack of a friendship community, a lack of support community. And we should have that.
Yeah, totally. We should definitely have that. And talk a little bit about how, we can be aligning our values and taking action on those or within organizations that support our values.
Well, it's funny that you ask that, because just today, again, we're getting ready to do a promotion for Valentine's Day. And one of the things that we talk a lot about here at Riversedge Arts is love. We are topically in our name an arts organization, but that's not what we do at all. We're really about the economic redevelopment of Woonsocket and supporting youth to make sure that they can take part in that redevelopment. And the way we do that is we pay youth workers to take part in our programming, where they learn art and design skills. They learn them at an industry standard level, so that they're actually working directly with clients. Like if you wanted a logo made, they would say, okay, let's talk to DJ and see what it is that we can do, and how we're going to fit their brand and all of that. So they learn all of that. But I think that the reason that we tend to talk so much about love is, first of all, love is a massively creative force. So it's going to be behind any kind of art. It's going to be behind any kind of giving. It's going to be behind anything that a person creates. And that's no different if you're creating a piece of like visual art, or you're taking a photo, or if you're making a craft. I mean, I love to make things. And one of the reasons is because it does fill me with a sense of inspiration and creativity. But when we are trying to talk about love at River's Edge, what we're really talking about is how do you manifest that love? You can do it through creating a product. You can do it through making a gift. You can also do it through volunteering, because we know that the connection between love and, well, frankly, feeling good is there's action in there. Love doesn't just sort of come from no place, and nor does it become seen without any kind of evidence. And so I was just using a quote today. I was looking through a couple of quotes from Dr. King, and a couple of quotes from Cornel West and Bell Hooks, and one of the things that they all had in common was talking about how love is inextricably linked to action and to senses of justice. I think those are two really poignant pieces to look at in our current, sort of social climate and all of that. Whatever someone believes in terms of their morals, they want to act on. And that act is an act of love.
And those are all really great points. And I hadn't really thought about love in that aspect. I kind of did a little snicker when you said, now that I hit 40s, many of my listeners are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And, it's funny because I find that the generations that came after mine, they are much more in tune with that sense of community and getting involved. But as you get older, oftentimes we're not just thinking about building those communities or sustaining those communities, but it's also you start to think about, what legacy am I leaving behind? So how does getting involved with a charitable organization really help us with that?
Well, I'll talk to you about my mom. My mom is in her 70s, and she's my best friend. And so one of the things that she discovered, my father passed away during COVID, and it was a very long and painful passing. And they were separated for the first time for more than 9 days, and they'd ever been separated in their married life of 50 years. And one of the things that she discovered was that she did feel, partly coming out of COVID and partly because of the death of her very best friend and her partner, she started feeling really, really isolated. And she also started feeling like she didn't matter. Like if I don't have my husband to take care of, or if I don't have this family to take care of now that her girls are grown and all of that, what is my purpose, and what am I leaving? Like you're saying, what am I leaving behind me? How will people remember me? What will people know about me? She used to be a labor and delivery nurse for 30 years. And so one of the things that she started doing was teaching childbirth classes and trying to do some other volunteer work. And she's a volunteer with my organization as well. She does it in her own way. And I think that's the other thing that's really important for people to recognize is that, when you're worried about making your legacy or thinking about making a legacy, you shouldn't feel like you have to do it in only one way. My mom's really introverted, and she does actually like spending a lot of time alone, but she has found a lot of cool ways to contribute to, what her kids do, and to make meaning now out of something other than taking care of my dad when he was ill, out of something other than caring for everybody else all the time. She's really learned how to figure out like what gives her joy, and to make the connections that are going to let that joy kind of live past her. So I think that that's been really instructive for me. I get that maybe I'm on the younger end of things, but I think possibly because of being best friends with my mom, I have kind of internalized a lot of and I've watched closely as she has dealt with some of those issues over the past couple of years. But I've been really glad to be able to kind of team up with her and watch her sort of create the piece that she wants to leave behind while she's still here. Because that's the other really important thing is I think that sometimes we forget that every day that we're living, we're making that legacy, whether you're 20 or you're 30 or you're 50 or you're 95, which is my friend's mom is 95 and she is doing great. And I have another actually a friend who's 95 who goes swimming every day, and I see her there and she's awesome.
This is your host, DJ Horton. But did you know that I'm also a founding brand partner with Neora? Neora is a company that really abides by clean meets performance in their products. But what I really love about it is the opportunity It has done so much for me and for people on my team, being able to pay off bills early, go on vacation, and make a difference in the world. Are you looking to make a difference in 2023? Check out the link in the show notes. It is going to be a great year.
So I think it's really important that, yeah, when that person is no longer on the planet, we still all can talk about them and say, wow, they were such an amazing person. Like this person I go swimming with, she's just kind every day to everybody. And she walks around with her water weights, and she's a champ. She's
And
an
that's part of
inspiration.
her legacy, right?
This
That
is exactly
kindness,
it.
that
The
kindness.
kindness and that inspiration. Because if
Mm,
I'm as cool as she is when
at
I'm,
95,
95, I'll be
God bless
very
her.
happy.
Yeah, God bless her. So I know a lot of times people, when we think about charitable giving, people automatically think about money. Like, in order to be making an impact on a charity, I have to have expendable money. And when you're working, that's not always possible. When you're older, it can totally be possible. And, you can do that through your will, you can do that while you're living. But let's talk a little bit about some of the other ways that people can get involved in nonprofits like yours.
Yeah. Well, so I think volunteering is a huge one. And the reason I always say volunteering is because I will tell you, I was at one point, I had moved back from Ohio where I was teaching. I'd moved back to Rhode Island to be closer to my parents and to make sure that I was, sort of, my sister and I would joke. She was in Canada. So we both wanted to make sure that we were always within a driving distance of my parents. When I did that, I really was disconnected from the Rhode Island community because I hadn't been here for quite some time. And so that was one of my main ways of getting involved again. Was I volunteered for like every possible organization that I thought would be interesting to me. I didn't do it from a perspective of, oh, this one might give me a job or this one might do this or any kind of self-interest. It was really about networking in the best sense. Like, let me find out what the people around me, like who's like-minded and what their passions are, because that's really inspiring. And again, it creates a really strong sense of community. So I think people often overlook volunteering. I think they also often overlook the fact that you can, if you're volunteering, it's your time. You can do it on your terms. And that means that you don't need to accept what an organization hands to you. You don't, oh, well, what are your volunteer opportunities, you might ask, to an organization? And the organization says three things. And you say, well, I love your organization, but I don't like those three options. You might have your own proposal. I say, do it. You might say, I just don't like those options. And you go find another organization that has a similar goal. Riversedge is a small organization. And one of the things that I do is, rather than putting a lot of stress and strain on our capacity to create volunteer roles, we work with our volunteers to create an individual role that they feel comfortable with. So some of them might be former educators, and they're really great. And they say, oh, if I can do this, can I do a project at home and help you? And I'm like, oh, absolutely, yes. Other ones are high school kids, and they come here and they paint, a part of our building, which is very, very old. So I think tailoring a volunteer opportunity is really important for the organization, but it's also really important for the volunteer. You're not going to stay if you're not happy. You're not going to
True.
stay if you're not getting something from it. And I don't know why anyone thinks that any kind of interaction, volunteer or otherwise, should be entirely altruistic. It should not. You have the right to enjoy yourself. You have the right to feel inspired. And so to me, it's about trying to find a way to give back that makes sense to you, that makes sense of you, that uses your special skills and talents, and that brings you joy. So I think volunteering is definitely one thing. And people, I think, don't necessarily know all the different ways you can volunteer. Certainly you can volunteer in ways that give your expertise to an organization, but you can also spread social media. My goodness,
Mm.
it's one of the biggest things that people can do. If I had every single person share a post that we sent out, so many people would know about who we are. And you're basically making 10 of yourself,
Right.
if people might be interested. So there's lots of cool things that folks can do as a volunteer.
So talk a little bit about serving on the board of a
Yeah,
nonprofit. Because a
absolutely.
lot of times people think, well, I have to be an expert in a certain area in order to be on the board, or I have to be asked to be on the
Mm,
board. And rather
right.
than asking, is there capacity that I can fulfill?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Board is predominantly governance. I will absolutely clear up in the interest of all of the of confusion around it is the board is not they're not necessarily subject matter experts in an area. So if we're an arts education and training organization, we specialize in industry standard skills like Adobe Photoshop and all that. Do you have to do that? No, you don't have to know anything about it because we already have people we pay to do that. We have staff members. So what we are always looking for, and every organization is certainly different, but we're always interested in are people who love the mission and who feel that they have something to contribute actively, who are creative thinkers, who are problem solvers, and who are dedicated to at the end of the day making sure that organization stays alive and functioning and sustainable for its clients. And so I used to think that as well, that like, no, you have to be, approached to be on a board and that kind of thing. Most nonprofits are so busy putting out fires that they don't even think to come out and ask people. They wait for their board members to cultivate other board members, and then what ends up happening is we end up with everyone's friend of a friend of a friend, and you don't get a lot of diversity. You don't get a lot of diversity in perspectives and geography and all of that kind of stuff. And that's really important. As anyone who's from Newport will tell you, the people in, say, Providence County don't necessarily know all their interests and quirks and all of that. We're really different, even in a state as small as Rhode Island. So serving on a board is something where I say, you reach out to the staff, you reach out to the executive director and say, I'm interested in this. Here are some skills that I have and ways I'd like to contribute. Would love to become involved in your board, because the other thing that people often forget, and we definitely do this at Riversedge, is rather than bringing someone onto the board immediately, we often ask them if they'll, take a tour of the organization, if then they'll meet with some board members, if we can assign them a board buddy, they can maybe participate in a task force that is, specifically dedicated to something they're interested in. That way it gives them a chance to find out if they like it, if the time commitment works for them, and all of that. And I think that that's a really good way to do it too.
Yeah,
Is to
that's
say,
a
hey, can I
great
be
way.
a volunteer? Yeah.
A lot of times people don't realize that you can be a part of a board committee without actually serving on the board. And you're right. An important word that you used in describing the board is it's about governance. It's not about management. It's about governance. It's about steering the organization towards its mission and vision and not letting things get off track. It's about doing the due diligence and making sure that the organization stays viable and strong. Listeners, I hope that you have found something of meaning here, and I'm sure that each and every one of you have a charitable spot in your heart, whether you already have picked an organization that you absolutely feel very committed to. If not, take a look around. Think about the things that you are interested in, the skill sets that you have, and look around. There are plenty of nonprofits that can use your expertise. Kristen, I want to thank you so much for helping to broaden the horizons of our listeners, and make sure that you reach out in the show notes to Kristen and learn more about Riversedge Arts. Thank you so much, Kristen.
Thank you.
Do you think one of the biggest advantages to aging is all the knowledge we gain along the way? Me too. What did you learn today? Share with me in my Facebook group with the same name as this podcast, Advantages to Aging. Now hit subscribe so you don't miss all the tips to come in future episodes.